we began by taking vision of all the needs that we had on the compound. And our own missionaries came out, and they helped us wire this electrical wire in our first main building. Later on, when we did it through the other dorms and over the school buildings, I hired a man from Joss who came in as an electrician, and he came in and did most of the wiring at that time.
All right, one final question about the construction details. How did electricity help the water system?
The water system was originally set up with a pump, which was a ram pump, and when we got electricity, we got a centrifugal pump, and that helped us because with the centrifugal pump, we were able to chlorinate the water at the same time. It had been filtered, then we could chlorinate it, and that was good enough for drinking out of every faucet in the compound. So that was what electricity did for the water system.
Great.
I might add, we had government people coming out with test tubes, turning on different faucets all over the place just to make sure that we weren't pulling their leg or something.
This was unusual.
Yes, we were the only place in Nigeria where you could drink the water out of any faucet.
All right, we have some other questions here of a different nature. This next question asks, was it difficult to find people for the staff since they had come to Africa to work with Nigerians?
The mission chose the people who came to Kent Academy. And you have to hand it to these people because they had come thinking they were going to work with the African on bush stations and all, in little schools and things. And they came to us and they taught American and Canadian and English kids. Some of them for a very little time, and some of them stayed a number of years. And we were grateful for all of them.
Why and when were bicycles no longer allowed at Kent Academy?
Well, at the very beginning, we did allow bicycles. And for many years, we had to have someone who would repair bicycles, take care of the flat tires, and it wasn't long because the building where the bicycles were kept was needed to put other buildings. So it came down and the space was used for larger buildings, especially the main building that we call it was the dining room building, also the living room, and it had practice rooms, so it was a very important building.
Tell us about the playground equipment. How did you get it?
We got good playground equipment. Mother and Dad were interested in the school, and they sent home to America for a good monkey bar set, which came out to Nigeria, and it was installed, and it's still there being used by people today. So that was one of the first ones, and then the swings and slides were made out there in Nigeria.
Tell us about some of the good times.
Many good times. One of the ones that I loved best was stocking opening night before the kids went home for Christmas, and to watch the children. At one time when we were on furlough, or each time we were on furlough, we would get stocking stuffers, and we would go back with everything from yo-yos to little dolls and pocket combs and dear knows what not. And then the parents would come over on the night before, and we had them all divvied up, and the parents wrapped everything, stuffed the stockings together with oranges and candy and whatever. And we hung them on this great chain across the fireplace. And the children loved that. And we loved the fellowship with the parents the night before, too. Another thing that we think about often is the marionette show. And because the children were small, or at least young, not adults or anything, we had to pair them off so that each, like in Hansel and Gretel, mother had to have two people to work. One to work the marionette and another one to be the voice. And so all of the pairs would get together at rest hour with the marionettes that they had made and practice. Before the marionettes got made, Paul and others took wood, what was that stuff? Sawdust and glue, and made the heads for these things. And then somebody came along and made the bodies and stuffed them, and then we got the clothes sewn, and then the next person would thread the arms and legs and feet and all. They were really very good. And we had a lot of fun with that. I'm sure the kids can remember everything from beetle races to you name it.
I remember Sunday afternoon walks. I remember memorizing scripture and learning many choruses. Those were great times. Some of the bad times were deaths. Barbara Swanson, Beulah Herr, the Gosen, father and son. What about rabid dogs and adventurous runaways?
Well, we need to correct the idea that a rabid dog fell into the dam. If it did, it happened after we had left. Normally dogs don't go anywhere near water. Rabid dogs don't go near the water. But one day, I was taking my son Jim home to bed. He was a kid too. And I had left the lunchroom. And here this dog came careening right through the quadrangle up to the boys' dorm. And I heard the little dog Vicky, owned by the Herrs, yelping. And then this dog came careening back, and he had a lot of saliva on him and everything. I parked Jim on the big rock in the middle of the compound, and I said, "Don't move." And I went into the dining room to get Paul. And of course he went for the shotgun and followed the dog down the road and did away with it. In the meantime, I went back to the rock to get Jim, and here the dog Vicky, covered with all of this saliva, had sought comfort in my son's arms. And he had the scratches and this, all over his hands and everything. So I took him in to the house, washed him real well, and Paul took us straight to Dr. Trout. And he said, "We can't even ask questions about scratches. You and Jim have to have 14 shots to the tummy." So we don't like rabid dogs in our family.
Now, Dr. Trout was in Joss.
Yes.
That's 23 miles away.
That's right.
And that's not like
Any
23 miles
any
on these
crisis,
roads.
that's what we had to do.
Wow. And that's not like 23 miles on these roads either.
No. No. We, once upon a time, we counted the curves. I don't know if it's 60 some or all those curves on the way to the city.
Huh. Is there someone on the KA staff who stands out in your mind as being exceptional?
Yes, many. I think they were all exceptional for being there myself. Everybody loved Linda Clausen because she fed us. And when Jack Phillips and Dorothy Phillips came, they took over a lot of the work in the classrooms, and they stayed long after we left. They were there in the 50s, and I think they came home sometime in the 70s. And they were very dear people. And then I have mentioned the Zabriskis, for whom we are eternally grateful for the fact that they wanted to stay there and help us establish that school. And they got it off on the right footing.
Tell us about epidemics. Was it hard to deal with some of them?
Yes. We had measles, mumps, chickenpox, which was particularly awful. The children would scratch. We didn't want them to have remove the scabs so that they would be scarred for life. And it was just really a hard epidemic. And then flu. And one of the worst epidemics we had, Dr. Trout sent a nurse out to help us because there were kids in the infirmary and kids in bedrooms. It was just everywhere. And the staff at KA was exhausted. And so I remember that one with no love at all.
In the early years, how did you contact parents?
Well, in the early years, my parents came on their vacation to the rest home. Well, we allowed the children to go and spend the time during that vacation period with the parents. We did contact the parents through the radio. That was through Joss. Then we had Gerry would every time when she wrote the parents, or the children would write, she would drop a note on the end of the kids' letters and tell how the children were getting along. So that made up a good feeling to the parents so that they knew that we were looking after their children.
The one problem was that in the early years we really didn't have a radio that we could radio in from Miango to Joss. You'd have to drive in, tell the mission headquarters, and then they could telephone Kano or Sokotor. And then at the other end, they would have to send a driver out to contact parents if a child was really sick or something.
Now this mail, you talked about writing home to their parents. How did was that mailed by Nigerian Postal Service?
Yes, and the kids would write on Sundays when they had to be quiet anyway and before their walks. And then if they wanted to seal up their letter, that's fine. I'd write on the envelope, whatever. And just to say that all was well, or Johnny was over his cold or whatever.
Right. What were some of the concerns when independence came to Nigeria in 1960?
I think that a lot of us were fearful, and that was really nothing that we should have been concerned about, because the Nigerians were very grateful for the independence. And I know that at Miango, we had the chief and his whole retinue come up to Miango and assure us that we would be safe, and if anything happened while they were in charge, and we were now their visitors. So instead of our visiting Nigeria and being able to talk to the Nigerians in that light, we became the visitors, and they told us what to do.
We were their guests. There was an attitude change.
How many MKs passed through Kent Academy while you were there?
Paul and I think between 150 and 200 in those years. And of course, many more after that.
How long did you serve there, and what have you been doing since? I guess we did touch on this
Yes,
at the
Touched
very
at the
beginning.
very beginning.
So you were there from the very beginning, which was 1946, even 45 for you, I guess.
And
through to
44 for Paul.
44.
And I came in 46, and then we both came home in 63 because we had a daughter that needed help and needed us. And so we had to stay home with her.
All right, one final question here. A comment about God's provision of people who had information or skills or power which helped Kent Academy.
Well, let me talk to you about that because at the very beginning, building process was new to me. I had never done that at home even. But when it came to building, there were South African missionaries who had built with adobe brick, and they knew what proportions of sand and cement and worm cast could be put together to form a plaster that would stick on the brick. And so that was one of the things. The South African gentleman came to Yango, and he taught me how to plan on septic tanks and plumbing. Those are things that had to be done by someone who knew things about it, and he taught me that. We had our welder who came when we built the main building, who knew how to bend rods for concrete, and he was one that welded turrets on the tanks in the Second World War. So God sent us people like that, but I think one of the books that helped me the most was Mr. Dancy's book on building, and it was Ray Davis's book on building dams, and but the main reason that we had a good water supply was because of the popular mechanics that I read here in the States. It told how to build a water supply for farmers, and building dams and filter beds and all of these things that were needed to make safe water for farmers. Well, I used the same principle for building the dam and the water system in Nigeria.
There is one last story that I think everybody should know. When Mother and Dad Craig, in their earlier years, were down in Isanlu in Nigeria, an assistant district officer came with his bride to that little town. And his bride took very, very sick. And of course, the mission station had lots of fruit trees on it. And so Mother Craig made sure that they had lots of fruit, because in the government compound there, they didn't seem to have much. And the young people were very thankful for Mother and Dad Craig. Years and years later, we were building Kent Academy. We heard that the land was only leased, and no more people could have any more leased land on the plateau. And Kent Academy was bursting at the seams. We needed the road all the way down where the teachers' houses and the track, I think, was down there. And so we didn't know what to do, because the government said no, or had said. My father-in-law bumped into this young assistant district officer, and now gray, and his name was Mr. Niven. And he had become the head district officer of the Bauchi Plateau and was working in Jaws. And the man recognized Dad, and of course Dad said, "Why don't you come out and visit sometime?" And he said, "I'd love to." So he did. And then after they had had tea and everything and looked around Miango, he said, "Do you want to come over and see the school?" "Well, yes." And so he took him around the school. And then he said, "We don't know, what would you advise us to do? We don't know how to make more room. We need this room for the children and the teachers' homes and that kind of thing. But we hear that we can't get any more land on the plateau. What would you advise us?" He said, "Well, you could write to Kaduna if they could only say no." And so the mission did. Well, in a few months, the person at Kaduna, who was the big honcho in the northern provinces there, took very ill, and he went home to England. And guess who was sent to Kaduna just in time to approve of our request? And so that's how we got the extra land.
It's amazing, amazing. And I know that these are only very few of the stories. I've been reading some of the chapters and just seeing so much of God's hand and blessing over Kent Academy in the last 60 years. And I think this brings to the end our interview, but we do, all three of us, want to send greetings to those of you in Kent Academy that are meeting to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Kent Academy. And I thank so much Paul and Gerry Craig for their faithful vision, their perseverance, as I read in some of the early reports of others that weren't so sure that this would work, that this could fly. And because of their vision, God has blessed amazing ways in the past 60 years through the ministry of Kent Academy. Thanks to you folks. You may want to add some greeting.
In closing, we would like to add our personal greetings to Jim and the family, and especially for this 60th anniversary there in Nigeria. We do appreciate all that they're doing now for a different group of people, the Nigerians, which we feel is wonderful. And to know that Kent Academy began, and we were part of that beginning, and now it's continuing, for which we're most grateful to God.
And I would like to add that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. And God did build Kent Academy. We are so grateful that our own Kent Academy kids are in charge. And thank you, Linda and Jim, for all you have done. And we just thank for each one of you. We pray God's blessing upon that school and each one of you.